it's from the 1500s, and it says that you can only make beer from you say, well, when you think of beer in Germany, you think of Bavaria, you think of the Keller beers that you find in Franconia, and that's a lot of the feedback we got when we published this book this year. The first feedback was, Berlin, they know nothing about beer. And the second feedback was, you can't go hiking in Berlin. And I find the two things, those two statements completely inaccurate. For a start, I would argue, and this is going to be a very hot take, that Berlin at the moment is the number one city for craft beer in the whole of Europe.
Wow.
Yeah, there are a minimum of 45 different craft beer manufacturers within the city that do everything from kind of your international styles to your Belgian beers to your German beers, your sours, everything. Everything is available here throughout every single district. And so with that, I think there's such a wide offering that brings so many different tourists and people associated with the beer industry to the city. It's when you compare it to Bavaria and this kind of Keller beer thing, they do it very well, but they have a minimal offering. It's very limited to your Weiss beers, your Helles, and they do it very well. And these are the origins of beer history and beer culture within Germany and the entirety of Europe. But at the moment, the future for me, it's here in this city. I mean, you have to remember that the craft beer revolution only really kicked off perhaps around 2000, 2008. And a lot of it had to do with these kind of new strains of hops that were being pioneered in the US. And so it kind of took a while for it to integrate into Berlin and German culture anyway, because cultural progress takes longer here, I would argue, than perhaps in other places in the world. But there were a few places that really kind of picked up on it. And one of the first pioneers in the city was, I think his name's Thomas Schupper. He runs Schupperbrau. They have a brewery on Schönhauser Allee. You can find their beers predominantly within kind of the bio-organic supermarkets. But they were one of the first ones to take off. But it was around about this time that you were starting to have like a cosmopolitan feel of the city. There were a lot more like immigrants, people from other countries, such as ourselves, that were moving here. And that started to also change up the beer scene as well, because you had a lot of different voices and minds that were coming and bringing their own ideas, different flavors. And you had stuff like, for instance, Vagabond Brewery in Wedding, which is owned by, or at least started by, a couple of American guys who wanted to kind of create this kind of American craft beer vibe and style of beer and add it to the Berlin scene. And it was, these are some of the factors that helped kind of pioneer and craft the scene that we have today.
I can imagine the resistance maybe of the Germans, because it's like, why are these Americans going to try to tell us how to do beers, right?
Yeah, exactly.
They don't know, they know nothing about beers, right? Yeah, I mean, people in their country, they are very jealous about their own beer. So I can imagine, like, even in Mexico, like, some people may say that they have the best
Our
beer.
Corona.
Which is not the one that I was thinking, but yeah.
Okay.
But like Belgium also, they say that they have a very good beer. And there's always this polemic about who has the best beer in the world.
They have,
and now
they say they have the best
it,
one, right? The Belgians. They claim they have the best beer, right?
Yes, they claim. I don't know, like, if it's true. But they have a good beer. But also, like, we have this discussion also here in Germany between regions of Germany. But so it's something that is very much into the culture here. And now that there are so many breweries here in Berlin, I can imagine that there will be an evolution and there will be like better beers over time. That is not something that may happen in Bavaria, that they just say, okay, we have our perfect beer and we will not change anything on it.
I mean, you also have craft beer in Bavaria. It is also a thing.
Okay.
But if you go, for instance, in Franconia, or if you go in the countryside, there are a lot of these kind of small breweries, places that have been there for hundreds of years that, have been making these kind of lagers. They are not suddenly going to get a hazy IPA or, an American brand on tap. They're very much stuck in their culture and as they should be, because, they attract people from across the world that want to go there, that want to be a part of, their culture and their history and kind of engage with that. I don't think that you have people, revolting around the changes that are happening here, particularly because, for instance, in Germany, you have a law to say that you can only make beer from 4 ingredients anyway. So there's only a limited scope to what you can do and what you can create within the beer scene here.
But there's a law, you said? Like a law or like I don't know.
No, it's an actual law. It's the Reinheitsgebot.
Okay.
And it's from the 1500s. And it says that you can only make beer from water, hops, and barley and yeast. And you can't add anything else to it. So, if you go to the States, you go to Belgium, you go to any other country, then they use a lot of other different ingredients or fruits or sweetened additives to their beers. You can't do that in Germany. So you still have to brew beer within the Reinheitsgebot.
But is it that you cannot, or is it that it's not beer if you do that?
Exactly, it's not beer. It's not. You cannot classify it as a beer.
Okay, this kind of like, it's not champagne if it's not from the region of Champagne. Yeah, otherwise it's just sparkling wine. So okay, I get it. For the record, we're having here in these cups Bavarian beer.
Well, that's the secret to making podcasts.